Welcome to the North Group Podcast. We explore the ideas that shape great leadership, sharing stories, insights, and strategies to help you lead with purpose and clarity.
Welcome to the North Group Podcast. My name is Kent Hartzler, and I'm pleased to be hosting our conversation today. And I'm even more pleased to be with my friends and colleagues, Natalie Meese and Gina Breslin. Welcome, Gina. Welcome, Natalie.
Thanks, Kent. Thank you.
Yeah, we're here to talk about hiring, and I'm excited about this conversation for a couple of different reasons. One, hiring right fit people, it's just so important for organizations to be healthy and strong. And number two, this is a subject that's just near and dear to your hearts, and you're very passionate about it. So I'm excited to see where this conversation will take us. So
absolutely.
Let's jump in.
You may have to rein us in a little bit.
I love it. That would be
talk about hiring.
That would be my pleasure. Yeah. Let's start with kind of a high level. What do you love most about hiring, all things hiring? We'll start there.
Well, I was in a traditional HR background before North Group, and what I found I loved the most about HR was hiring. I could do it all day long and walk home at the end of the day feeling energized and built up, even though I had spent all day having conversations. It was just such a fun aspect. And I think what makes it so fun is you get to meet some of the most interesting people and hear the most interesting stories and careers and how that matches with our clients and learning about our clients and the companies and the products. It's just so fascinating.
Completely agree. I would say that's my favorite part too. Just the different, not only folks that are looking for their next opportunity, but just the clients we meet, the backgrounds, and then, you know, a CFO role in one company can look completely different in another company. And so it's like this gigantic puzzle that you're trying to put together, but at the end of the day, we're in the people business. And so then that just brings another dynamic. So it's super exciting when you can figure out how to put that puzzle together. How do you make sure that the right people are on the right bus?
And we'll get into this. It's always an adventure. No two processes are the same. There are things that are similar, and we'll get into that. But every client, every candidate, it's a puzzle. I like that analogy.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about, North Group has been doing hiring services for a while. Let's talk about the origin of that.
Sure.
Why did that start? When did that start? Let's kind of talk through that.
So I actually don't know when it exactly started, but I've been with North Group 15 years and it predates me. So we've been doing this for a while. But what I do know is that it felt like a very natural outgrowth or result of the other work that we're already doing. I mentioned the phrase that we're in the people business. And so we're focused on developing leaders. We're focused on healthy teams, healthy organizations where folks are working together efficiently. And so it just makes sense that part of what we would do is help people get that right person in the right seat in their organization. And so, it's 15, 20 years at least that North Group's been working on hiring. We've over time maybe refined some of our approaches, but at the end of the day, some of the core processes or philosophies around how we go about hiring, they actually haven't changed. It's pretty connected to being comes before doing, which is if you hang around North Group long enough, you'll hear that phrase talked about in various different ways.
Right. When you think of, that's good context, and you mentioned it's evolved, it's been iterative over time. Natalie, how long have you been at North Group and what involved in the hiring?
Yes, so I'm in my 7th year of my experience at North Group, and I was brought on specifically to support Gina in our hiring services. Gina was a department of one for a really long time, and I have focused primarily on hiring in my time at North Group. I would say it's been exciting to watch it grow year after year after year, and the way that we've been able to serve some of the same clients over and over and over again and build relationships with those individuals on the team. And even watching some of the people that we've support being placed in a position, then help them hire for their team. It's been great to watch it grow.
Yeah. And I think just to to see the impact of that. So there's this local event that supports, I believe, 4 nonprofits. Yeah, four different nonprofits. And when we look at that event and those 4 nonprofits, we have hired the CEO in each of those 4 nonprofits. And I say we, that's not me. That's in the entire North Group team. And those leaders are all still there and they're doing well. I guess the one individual's really new, but I have no doubt he's going to crush it and be there for a long time. So the impact. And again, it goes back to who North Group is. Like when leaders get better, everyone wins. And when that right leader's in the right organization, that ripple effect.
Yeah, and our clients come in all shapes and sizes, and some of them would have HR departments, others wouldn't, and there's just be everything in between. What are some of the common types of roles that we get requested to hire for?
Yeah.
Those executive roles, obviously, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, a lot of operational positions. Yeah. But I like to say we hire leaders at all levels, individuals that have tremendous leadership impact and influence in an organization. So executive assistants, project managers, there's really been a wide range of positions.
Yeah, that manager, director. And sometimes we get asked, hey, will you help to hire the boots on the ground folks? And it's hard for me to say no, because I like to win and be helpful everywhere. But that's not our wheelhouse. And so, yeah, knowing the places where we shine, and it's in those positions that Natalie described.
So I'm hearing a theme too. So leaders, people who influence people, but high trust positions as well, would you say?
Which is why actually the executive assistant position fits, because you would think, wait, that role, but I mean, like typically your EA knows everything.
Yeah.
And so when a leader thinks about who's that trusted person that I need, right by my side, handling a lot of the details. And then we also know that, like Natalie mentioned, the C-suite folks, there's such a ripple down effect from leaders at the top of an organization. And that's, one of the reasons why we get, those searches.
So let's talk about our process. What makes our process different and unique, distinctive? Let's get into some of our secret sauce.
Sure.
Yeah. You describe our process.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk about that for a long time, Natalie. I think one of the things is the fact that we have a process and we work really hard to make that process predictable so that people know kind of what to expect, not only our clients, but also the candidates. We work to make sure a process is repeatable so that we're not reinventing the wheel every time. Now, sometimes things will change slightly, again, depending on the company, how not complicated, multifaceted they are. Things might shift a little, but the foundational parts there. So predictable, repeatable, and
consistent.
Yeah. Thank you. I always forget the third one. But consistent's a huge piece. Again, that's around setting really strong expectations. But
we talk about things being art and science. Hiring is art and science. So you're kind of describing the science of it.
Correct.
And maybe there's more that you want to add, Natalie, but there's some artfulness to it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do feel like a project manager some days, keeping track of all of these different candidates who are at different stages of the process and making sure they each take each step at the right time. But the art of it too is that candidate evaluation. How do I get to know this person to really uncover who they are? So that way I can evaluate, do they fit what our client is needing in that role? And there's so much nuance to that. It can be really tricky, but also really fun, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that is actually North Group's secret sauce in hiring. Figuring out who someone really is. Now, I'd love to say we get it right 10 out of 10 but people are difficult.
We're working with human processes.
Correct.
So
right. Exactly.
There's some great interviewers out there.
Right. There are folks who interview well. But figuring out who someone really is and what they'll bring. And that's based again on that phrase I mentioned earlier, being comes before doing. And what we would add to that is, you need a CFO for your organization. You need someone who brings finance experience. It can't be their first rodeo, right? That's kind of a non-negotiable. But if that's the only thing you're thinking about, or especially what we see is when folks get hung up on, I need a CFO who's been in my industry, right? If that's, you're missing what we would feel is the most important part, and that's who is the person and how will they work with their team? How will they align with your culture? How will they advance your core values?
Well, let's get into that even more. So when we're approached, obviously, how do we get to know the organization so that we know the culture and how to serve them well, and then the candidate? So what are some of the ways that we go about that? We can even talk about the candidate profile and the hiring assessment.
Well, it's wonderful when we already have an established relationship with a client Then we have years of working with them in other service areas to help us really understand who they are, their mission, their vision, their values. So that way we can identify right fit candidates. But it's fairly common that sometimes we work with clients for the first time in our hiring services. And so we have to start by learning and asking questions and really trying to understand the dynamics of how the organization works and what's important to them. But creating a candidate profile is where we always start as our North Star to guide a process. Because, Gina, there's been so many times where once we get started, it can feel a little chaotic, right? There's candidates at different steps of the process. You're talking to all of these people and candidate A looks amazing, but is it because they're amazing or is it because candidate B and C are really bad? So it makes A look terrific. So when we start by figuring out what we need, creating a candidate profile and really identifying what are those characteristics, skills, and experiences.
So this is more than just a job description.
More than just a job description that are essential for someone to be successful. That can be our North Star to help make sure we don't get distracted along the way.
Yeah. More to add to that, Gina. This is where you guys shine. And I've been part of enough processes working with the hiring team where this process is proven. It works.
Yeah. So one of the things about this idea of a candidate profile, and Natalie used the word like North Star. I love to tell stories. And we had a client come to us. They were hiring a position. They were doing it on their own. And this gentleman came to North Group and said, "Hey, I've got these two really great candidates and I'm stuck. I don't know who I should make the offer to." And, so tell me more. Well, when I look at the experiences, candidate A, they have all the things and they actually have this extra experience that they bring that would be beneficial. We weren't really looking for it, but that would be kind of cool. Okay, so tell me about candidate B. Well, it's the same scenario. They meet all our experiences requirements, but they have this other bonus thing. It's different from A, but it's not required to be nice to have. So he's stuck. How do I pick? But the part that he missed was, the culture piece. Who are the people? How will they fit your team? And so what we encouraged him to do was kind of mid-process, which our best practice is do this before you even start your process. But mid-process, go back and identify what are those 3, 4, 5, you have to twist our arm, right, Natalie, to get to 5, right? Characteristics, like who do we need someone to be to fit our organization and to fit this role? And those are actually two different things. Someone who fits our culture, the characteristics that they bring for a specific position could be different. So if I am hiring someone that I need to do a lot of negotiation, like that skill, and that person who's maybe somewhat competitive, like I might need that for this role, but I still need them to be a culture fit, where someone else can be a culture fit but not bring those characteristics. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so when you have that picture and you have essentially like an evaluation tool or a rubric, and so now you know what it is that who you're looking for. So it just helps bring some clarity. Yeah.
So nothing animates like a story or two. So let's get into what are some of the most memorable or favorite hiring processes that you've been part of? And I'm sure there's many, but what are a few that stick out and why?
Well, there's always when you're interviewing candidates and a candidate says, "I probably shouldn't say this in an interview."
Oh.
But, and I'm like, "Don't say it. Just don't say it. Stop." Right. And they say it and you're like, "Oh, I wish you wouldn't have said that."
You should have just thought that, kept that as a thought.
Not said it out loud. Yeah.
Interesting. What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I was thinking back to one particular search that stood out it was 2020 in August. It was a very volatile time to hire. Every time we started a search, you kind of held your breath because you just didn't know what your candidate pools were going to look like. And this particular client was looking for an HR manager and they were a manufacturer, had a very diverse workforce and wanted someone with manufacturing experience, wanted someone with a significant amount of HR experience, but also really wanted someone who's bilingual, which is fantastic. I wanted that for them as well. But the more parameters that you put on a candidate, the narrower your pool will be of qualified applicants. So we started the search. I like to think I'm fairly positive, but I was a little nervous about finding a good candidate. And we ended up having two candidates that were bilingual, met all the qualifications and met all the characteristics that we were looking for. And so the client hired both.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And they were
awesome.
very opportunistic at realizing we weren't budgeting for 2 HR managers, but we can kind of figure out how to get both of these members on our team. And they did. And to me, you have to take advantage of those opportunities where you find those right fit people. You can't let them pass you by.
Yeah, and sometimes you just have to be responsive to a good process yields something that maybe you didn't expect, and you're in the moment, and you have to make that decision.
And then they had 2 departmental members in their HR team that spoke Spanish, which was such a huge asset to the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have a similar story of a search where it's an accounting firm. And so we know folks in that field are really hard to find. And they were looking for kind of a mid-level person. And this candidate came in who checked. I mean, essentially, you could have said it was overqualified. But like everything else on the resume, and then after, that candidate walked through North Group's process, a phone interview and then an in-person interview, we're like, I know this isn't the budget that you were expecting in terms of their compensation requirements, but wow. And similarly to Natalie's story, they went ahead and they hired this individual. That individual is now a partner in that firm and leading really, really well. And that
That's
was
so
years
rewarding.
ago.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about every client is different and every situation is different, but there's probably common questions or things that we get asked or that show up in these processes. Can you think of some things that you can almost anticipate we're going to run into along the way in a process?
Well, a big one is, how do we know that the candidate we're interviewing is the same person that will show up on day one? We've had lots of clients that have had really poor experiences in the past where they thought they had this tremendous fit. And then a couple days into the new hire's tenure, they knew this was not the person that I talked to on the phone.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of trainings on hiring. I think that's the question that comes up the most for me. I don't know about you, Gina.
Yeah, I know. I would completely agree. Share your story around that if you don't mind, because you have a good example that really brings that to light.
Yeah, so I can't take credit for this example, but I attended an event where the presenter shared this analogy, and it has always stuck with me. But I'm going to describe a candidate to you, and why don't you try to guess who this candidate might be?
Sure.
So it was a male, born in 1948, raised in the UK, was married twice, lives in a castle, and held the title of prince.
Wow.
Well,
but I don't know.
Prince Charles.
Prince Charles, or
Prince
somebody
Charles
like that.
might be a name that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? There's another famous person that holds all of those same descriptors, and it's Ozzy Osbourne.
Come on.
He held the title of the Prince of Darkness, but he could still write Prince on his resume.
Yeah.
And so how, our
that
clients
is a
really
good story.
struggle with, how do I think I'm getting Prince Charles? And then Ozzy shows up on day one. And really just, for me, it's so much about emotional maturity and EQ. That's what I think is a real differentiator in trying to determine if that person will be who shows up on day one.
No, that is probably a common one. What about how many candidates you need to have, and when do
How
you?
long is this
how
gonna
long is it going to take?
right?
And when do we make a decision? When do we wait?
Yeah.
What do we see there?
Yeah, there's so much wrapped up into that, Kent. Like timeline, I mean, we get it's real. When a position is open, depending on what that position is, it's likely that you're asking your team members to carry more responsibility, maybe work later, put in more hours, and that that's draining to your current team. We are always working to encourage our clients, though, like if you try to hire in a hurry, we know the cost of getting it wrong is significant, and it's not just the dollars, but it's the impact on your team. So now you're going to start over. And so that, how long is it going to take? Yes, have a process, make it predictable, make it consistent, make it repeatable. But as you do that, like, stick to your process. Some of the most rewarding success stories are those individuals. I'm thinking of one right now. We put a president in place. They waited and they waited. This candidate I think could do the job. They do align, but we want a 10 out of 10. And you know what? They eventually got the 10 out of 10. So it's hard to put a number. Right. It's hard to answer that question. You can, be very diligent in your project management. I think North Group does a good job at keeping things moving at the project management element. But we also get the tension that's very real when a position is vacant.
And that probably goes back to the strength of the candidate profile, because that's really the rubric by which we're looking at whether this fits the role.
Yeah.
And so if we have one candidate and there's one role.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's another story I often share where, interestingly, it was a CFO position that we were helping to hire. And for some reason, by the time we got to the place where we were recommending candidates forward to the client, we had one that we felt aligned with that rubric, one. And the owner and CEO of that company was so frustrated with me. He's like, what about your maybe pile? Or what about the other people that you interviewed? Or, he's like, don't you have someone else you can send me? I would just love to look at another candidate. And finally, I looked at him and I said, well, we can send you the people that we've ruled out.
Right.
But our encouragement ended up like, let's go back to the profile. There is value in comparing candidates. We would never say that there's no value to that. But the better question is, between these candidates, the best question is who most aligns with that profile. Yeah, that picture of who we set out to hire. So that's a tough space. Tough space to be in. And yet I think there's a way around it. I think there's a solution when you have that picture. That rubric.
Well, and processes move so quickly these days. There's been a couple times where we've had a stellar candidate apply day one.
Right.
And move through the process. You can't slow them down because you might risk losing them. And so clients have had to make decisions without interviewing anyone else. Because there just wasn't people moving along as fast as that candidate in a process. They had another offer. And so I always appreciate the candidate profile because, again, when you don't have time to compare candidates, it can really help you feel that you've done your due diligence and have a measuring stick to make a wise decision.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And maybe this leads us into this next part of the conversation, but what are some of the specific and unique challenges today in this hiring environment? Because we can always look at, labor challenges, and hiring's hard in general, but are there things that come to mind like in this season right now that would be helpful for some of our listeners to be aware of or to think about that we're seeing on a regular basis? Maybe the timing of how fast you need to move is an example of that.
It does feel a little bit more of a game than it once did in understanding where candidates are at in other processes. So we, in all our phone interviews, ask the question, are there any timelines that we should know of? We want to support you in hiring. Please let us know if you have other opportunities that you're working through, so that way we can try to serve the timeline the best. Because it can be very competitive and you can lose candidates really quickly due to timing.
Yeah,
that's actually a success story. What Natalie described, like a story I can think of where there was a company that we were working with to fill a finance position. It's difficult to find those candidates. And we had a person, it felt like a 10 out of 10. And I said to the client, they have another offer on the table. And that client, I wish all our clients could do this. And I know life is real. They can't all. But she rearranged her schedule and came in on a Saturday to interview that client or that candidate and was instantly like, you're right, North Group, hire that person. So there's, Natalie and I are competitive. We like to win. And so that her willingness to not need a ton of candidates and to move quickly when it called for it ended up serving her and that company really, really well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I think in today's market, you just have to be responsive and willing to make decisions, maybe without everything lining up quite as neatly as you would have liked.
Without all the data.
Right, without all the data.
That's really good. That's really good. Well, one of our values at North Group is instilling hope, and we think that that's a great leadership characteristic. So we want to inspire hope for our listeners as well. What are things, this is challenging. Hiring is challenging in general, right fit, culture compatibility. Just what are thoughts that, we would offer today for some of our clients and listeners on the hopeful side? This can be done. It can be done well. What comes to mind in that regard?
I do think the market is improving a little bit. I would say it's been several years where the market has just felt difficult. But within the last 3 to 6 months, I would say we're seeing a higher quantity of candidates for a wide variety of positions, but also better quality with more quality applicants. Hopefully that continues. It is a little bit unpredictable, but the beginning of the year, there often tends to be a lot more candidates actively looking. So hopefully if you've been waiting, now might be a good time to find some good people.
Yeah, I think just being responsive to the market and being willing to understand, where your organization is at. And I would add, I'm not really directly answering your question, Kent, but you mentioned early on, like hiring is an art and a science. And I mentioned, we'd love to think we bat 1,000, but every once in a while, you'll hire someone and you realize, they had the skills to do this job, but you know what? They're not actually a right fit for our team, for our organization. You do what you can to invest and develop, but if it's not working, I don't want to sound cold and say cut your losses.
Yeah.
But there does come a time where you need to have that conversation. And, yes, you want to hire slow and fire fast. Of course, you don't want to hire or fire too fast. But there is some truth to that statement. If I could encourage folks to think about like when you are hiring, I think one of the biggest things I would encourage people to think about, because we see this a lot, but the experiences that you need, like, are they really required or are they nice to have? Like Natalie and I have heard countless times this idea of, well, our industry is so complicated. Like someone,
we're
they
different.
must have experience in our industry. And there's a part of me like, you learned it. You figured it out.
Yep. Others can do the same.
So just like what is actually non-negotiable? Because like I mentioned, that CFO, you need CFO experience, like or at least high-level finance experience. But somebody at once upon a time, like it was their first CFO job. So again, what is required? Is it industry experience? I'm not so sure. We would absolutely, and yeah, I'm beating the drum, but that candidate profile comes before doing. You can figure it out. Like the right person is out there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really good. So as we wrap today, I'm going to throw a bonus question at us. So what's your go-to most favorite interview question? And I'll actually go first. I like the one that says, is there anything that you were expecting me to ask that we haven't talked about? And maybe we could even say that here as we think about our conversation. But that's a good one because it just allows opportunity for that candidate to, if they came in anticipating something that maybe we hadn't covered, to be able to do that.
I would, one of my favorite questions is, I just want to understand the why. Like, why are you interested not only in this position, but why are you interested in us as an organization? Like help me understand, what you're thinking. And I've had some people really flunk that question.
The wrong
compensation
why or no
is not
why.
the right answer.
Exactly. What would you be doing if money was no
and then
no
I've
object?
had some people I just really do well with that question. And so not only why do you want the role, but why are you interested in us as an organization?
How about you, Natalie? Best interview question.
One that I love to ask is, if I were your direct report, how would I experience your leadership in the day-to-day? And I really want tactical answers, because that to me is going to help me truly understand, how do they go about leadership every single day?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's good.
Gina, Natalie, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing in the conversation today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kent.